The best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Joette Calabrese, she's practiced homeopathy for over 38 years, treating over 10,000 cases. She's the founder and director of the Academy of Practical Homeopathy and Mastery, and she's taught and worked with the Prasanta Banerjee Homeopathic Research Foundation in Calcutta, India. Joette, over the summer, I had a baby, my third, and we ended up in the NICU, the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. And as we're treating him for pneumonia from meconium, that whole ordeal of being a week in the NICU, I reached out to you because one of my big concerns was, here I have this very healthy baby, other than the fact that he has pneumonia, and we have to be in the NICU now. How do I counteract what has become, I think, more normative to say, the damage of antibiotics? You hear a lot of people talking about probiotics to mitigate, but I reached out to you because I'm going, this is like a clean slate. He's starting out, his early life, and boom, we're having to do some pretty intense antibiotics. What do we do? And you were able to help guide me through that. And praise God, he had no digestive issues, no thrush on the tongue. He did so well after. And so I'd love to dive in with you into how we can help the gut and the body after using antibiotics when they're necessary.
Yeah, let's start with that. So when it's a newborn or baby on a year or under, a great way to start working with the child is to use Aconitum napellus, otherwise known as aconite. 200C, that's part of homeopathy, is to know what potency it is. 200C, 1 day only, 1 dose, that's it. And that can often clear the slate. I'm not going to guarantee that it's going to take care of absolutely everything, but it's a very good clear the slate commencing of getting the child going into the right direction. And you've told me there were no side effects. He had no thrush. In spite of having had some antibiotics, it's very likely that he's just fine. With your nursing, with everything else that you've done, it's likely that nothing has to be done at all, because the human body is always looking to make corrections. That is the default of the human body. It's when we overuse these synthetic drugs of commerce. There are times when they're needed, for example, in the circumstance that you described for your little guy. That is different than the absurd overuse of superfluous amount of synthetic drugs that are used in today's world, that we actually even forget that we ever even use them. Oh, yeah, that's right, the urinary tract infection. Oh, I forgot all about that bite from the insect, or et cetera, et cetera. So when someone is as pure as your baby, he may not need anything at all. What he really needs is your milk, your caring, and then moving forward. That's the way I see it.
And it was such a relief, because I think that was my fear. Here I am, I'm trying to research these antibiotics that they're giving him. You don't really have a choice in the emergency situation we were in. He was being administered antibiotics every hour. We had, I think, 3 different sets that he was on. He's receiving them intravenously. And, you see this behavior just going, okay, yes, we need life-saving measures here, but we also need to know how do we mitigate it. So it was so helpful. And again, he had no side effects, totally fine, which is rare. Usually this causes, among other things, gut issues, thrush. It can lead later on to food allergies if unaddressed.
And even behavioral problems. That's true. That's right.
Give an example of behavioral problem that would come from that.
When the gut is off, we often see behavioral problems, not just in children, but in adults too. They can become insecure or angry or irritable, cantankerous. That can all be difficulty falling asleep. Hence, then, because insomnia is an issue, now the next day they're up and they have to get going to their lives, and they can't cope with all of the stress of the sleeplessness, the anxiety, the gut, the bloating in the stomach, constipation alternating with diarrhea, etc. That can all be part of this. But with your little guy, it sounds to me like he's already on his way, and it's likely the way you ate during pregnancy, what you're eating now while you're nursing him, all that matters. So we're going to stay away from, I don't have to tell you this, we have to stay away from the breakfast cereals and the skim milk and the sugary treats at breakfast, and then lunch is another sandwich with lots of bread, and then dinner is pasta. No. We want to go with foods that are loaded with animal protein and animal fats. And so yogurt, eggs, beef, bison, bacon and eggs for breakfast. And lunch is maybe pork chop with a salad. Dinner is brisket or chuck roast and maybe some vegetables. That's the way. If you eat like that, then he's getting the nutrition that he needs in order to be able to withstand the fact that he was given antibiotics.
Excellent. Now, what if we're not talking about a baby? Is it different, for example, a kid versus an adult, or depending on what the antibiotic is? How would you treat it in that case to kind of save that gut damage that's occurring?
Well, here's the thing. What I gave you with Aconitum or Aconitum napellus 200C is for a child who's a year and younger. That's it. After a year, then we don't use that. Instead, what we're doing now is looking for what's presenting. What's happening? Oh, the child has bloating. Okay, now we're going to use a homeopathic medicine specific for bloating. We're not treating the symptoms, however. We're using the symptoms. Symptoms are actually gifts in a way to tell us what homeopathic medicine to choose. So we might use something like Lycopodium. So we're going to be using the condition. Or if there's diarrhea, what's the medicine we're going to be using? Now, do we know whether or not the diarrhea was a result of having been given antibiotics? Well, we don't necessarily even need to know that. But if we happen to know it, that the antibiotics were last week, and this week diarrhea has ensued, now we know, it's probably likely that we want to use something for diarrhea, and then we're going to be using, say, Veratrum album for diarrhea after antibiotic use. If instead the child is stomach pains and they're doubled over, now we're going to be using something like Cimicifuga. So because that's very specific for pains in the stomach in which the person doubles over, bends over, and wants pressure pushed against their belly. So we're looking for symptoms. And the beauty of your baby is that he doesn't have symptoms. So that's a very good start.
Now, the last one that you mentioned Veratrum album, and then what was the last one after that?
Cimicifuga in the stomach. It's not the only one. There are many homeopathic medicines from which to choose. Homeopathy has been around for over 200 years, and so it's been used in hospitals and clinics throughout the world. Now, it was used in the U.S. up until about the 1940s when it was determined that it was becoming a problem with the competition. And so it was put in a category to make it seem as though it was not useful or that it was even detrimental, which is hilarious on its own. But that only happened in the U.S. because in South America and all over Europe, Spain, Italy, France, Portugal, Switzerland, Germany, homeopathy thrived. And in India, of course, as you mentioned with Mother Teresa in Calcutta, it thrived in India as well. It's only here, only in North America, U.S. and North America, where it has been questioned, whereas in those other countries it's accepted. In fact, many doctors use it. The last I read, it was about 40% of medical doctors in Europe use homeopathy.
It's phenomenal. And what I love is that there are really no side effects to this. I know that, there always can be, but I've never experienced, and I grew up with homeopathy. My mom treated us with homeopathy as children. I remember even as a kid having your kit, you'd figure out the symptom, you'd read the book. I have the book that my mom had as a child that I use today. And it's so great because you're able to intuitively take care of your family. My husband comes from a big medical family, and this was a big pendulum swing for him. And now anytime something's going on, he goes, I'm going to the store. I'm going to go pick up a homeopathic. By the time I get there, just send me what it is that we need, because he's seen the results. And initially he went, what are you telling me? This $8 little pack that you maybe take a couple times and still have the whole container left over is actually going to help this concerning symptom that's going on right now.
A remedy that could actually abort an anaphylactic reaction, an allergic reaction, instead of the drugs that are used that are $1,000 for that drug. You can use a homeopathic medicine such as Apis mellifica and halt the action right in midstream, and watch the person resolve, get the swelling around the lips, the tongue, the throat. All of that can be mitigated immediately as long as that medicine is used within several minutes from the last dose. So dose every, say, 5 minutes.
And that's Apis mellifica for an anaphylactic response.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Okay, so if you're listening, I'm trying to include the name to each of the remedies that she's mentioning while we're on the program. I won't necessarily list what it was for. You'll have to go back and listen, but I'm listing these because I know they're hard to pull up. Joette, question.
They're all Latin.
Yes, I love it. Now, Joette Calabrese is my guest. She's been practicing homeopathy for over 38 years. She's treated thousands of cases, tens of thousands of cases. And if you'd like to learn more about her and her work, even browse through her blog, maybe to help find a solution to something you're experiencing within your own family, start with checking out her website, joetteslearningcenter.com. That's JOETTES learningcenter.com. She also has that blog that's linked through there, but I'll mention it, joettecalabrese.com. That's Joette, CALABRESE.com. You can join me and listen on the Relevant Radio app to Trending with Timmerie live each weekday at 6 p.m. Central. Thanks for listening.